We're now recording. So again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on our, I guess it's become a monthly town hall meeting. My name is Dan Clark, and I am the director of the Local Government Center at Montana State University. We host this in conjunction with the Montana Association of Counties, and we usually will address pressing topics that are relevant to all counties across the state. And as of late, and well, it's been mostly around COVID and its response, as well as around the funding, the recovery funding. So I think that will be again the case today. For those of you that are joining us maybe for the first time or want a quick reminder, as you enter the room, you are all muted. But you can unmute yourself. So if you have a question to ask at the appropriate time, feel free to unmute yourself and ask your question. Or you can use the chat feature, and you can find that at the bottom of, you've probably got a list on the right-hand side of all the participants. And at the bottom, there's at least on my screen, it's orange and it says chat. You can click on that little caret next to the chat word, and it should enlarge your chat. And you can see already that Eric has made a comment in the chat about the upcoming annual conference. So you can also ask your chat or ask your question in the chat box. We will be monitoring that, and we will relay the question to the appropriate person during the presentations, or you can ask your question by unmuting. I think you could probably raise your hand as well, and we could probably call on you if you want to do that, if that seems to work for you. These meetings will be recorded, and it will when it gets rendered, we will post it on our website at the Local Government Center. That's going to be at the msulocalgov.org, as well as we will send it over to MACo, and they will post it on their website as well. So if there are people in your organization that wanted to attend but were unable, they can always watch it later on, or you can review it if there's something that was discussed that you want to review later on. So with that, I think I'll turn the time over to Eric, who will introduce our special guests that have joined us here today.
Thank you, Dan, and thanks, members, for participating again. I hope this is somewhat informative, although I know I'm going to make many of you mad with reconfirming the announcements that U.S. Treasury is going to require that loss of revenue calculation in your interim report. So I'm getting that out of the way at the beginning. Secondly, I did post a friendly reminder that our annual conference is scheduled for September 26th through 29th in Flathead County. Please register. We have been told recently that the original hotel is booked, so the overflow hotels still have plenty of space. I'm still encouraging everybody to continue to get registered and keep checking back with the host hotel just to see if there's any additional cancellations that you can slip into. Again, September 26th through 29th, Flathead County. Even Dan, I think, will be there to entertain the crowd because we have our draft agenda still being worked. We're still filling in a couple of time slots, but we've got, for the most part, the conference agenda fairly well finalized. I'm going to try today to do some screen sharing and to do some posting. There's a couple of links that I want you guys to have access to as you're working through interim reports and also questions back and forth with U.S. Treasury, including things like allowable expenses. They've created or given out at least a new email address where they're apparently going to respond to direct inquiries about allowable expenses, which is a first. And I want to see if that's going to be worthwhile for our members to be able to use. But with that, I think I'll jump in. I do want to, we do have some guests here, so everybody hopefully be on your best behavior, including myself. Renee Lemons here from Department of Commerce, Anna Miller's here from DEQ, Cole Mack and Jay Reardon are from Department of Labor and Industry, and I'm going to hand it over to them to talk with whatever they want to talk about after we get through some of the initial reporting requirements, but just know we have guests. With that, let's try and share. Just want to share my screen. Huh, I seem to have lost it. That's okay. I'm gonna add it back up. Give me 1 second. Can you guys see what's on my screen right now, Dan?
Yes, we can see it looks like a home page with some news and weather on it.
Perfect. Hold on. All right. Do you see the recipient compliance and reporting responsibilities?
Yes, we can see that now.
Perfect. One more. All right. So this screen up that you should see right now is U.S. Department of Treasury Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Funds Compliance and Reporting Guidelines. I'll put the link to this in the chat room. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to get to. Page 17 spells out the difference between the reporting requirements and the two different reports that are going to be expected by those smaller population entities. So in Montana, we fit under the entire category of less than 250,000 residents receiving less than $5 million in funding. So you're going to be required to do that interim report. Column 1, interim report. It is one time only. So this interim report is different than what's going to be your annual expenditure reports that are going to be due essentially October 31st, 2021, and then every year thereafter. This one-time interim report covers from the date of award through July 31st of 2021. This is the report that's due August 31st of 2021. This is the one that we've been talking about and sending the emails back and forth on. And we, like you, just found out that this interim report requires anybody who received money in their direct allocation from U.S. Treasury to do the calculation for revenue loss. This was a surprise and not a happy surprise for us to find out that if you requested and received your direct allocation, that you have to go through the revenue loss calculation format. Page 21 kind of provides a good overview of what that interim report looks like, broken into the categories that are built into the database. For those of you that have gone through and done this, or at least tried to accomplish this reporting, it appears to be fairly self-explanatory with some, I think, problematic time period. So for example, your revenue loss calculation is an 18-month period. Your year to year is over the calendar year and not the fiscal year. And I acknowledge all of those are a huge pain in the butt, but I'll tell you, there's nothing I or NACo or anybody else can do about it. That's the format that they have in place, and that's the requirements that we all have to live with if you received your funding. You'll notice we're flying blind today, and by flying blind, I mean Jason's not here and Chantel isn't here either. Jason might be on the phone, but he's not on the computer. And he will tell you, had we known that the revenue loss calculation was going to be required if you requested these funds and received them, we probably would have told you to not request the funds until after this initial report period. Hindsight being 2020, we didn't know. And so now you're stuck with, if you've received funds directly from Treasury, you have to do the revenue loss calculation. Any questions about the report that's due the 31st, the interim report, including revenue loss calculations? Any questions? Wow, I'm surprised.
So this revenue loss calculation, if you didn't have any revenue loss you still have to do a calculation of some kind?
Yes, that's the frustrating part. So even if you're not going to claim payment, so the funds that were received by counties directly from U.S. Treasury, you can use those to offset revenue loss, and they give you a formula for how you do that. Even if you're not going to use them because you either don't think you have revenue loss or don't want to use them for revenue loss, you still have to do the calculation. And what the National Association of Counties has said is that this interim report is interim, and it's it's likely allowed to be modified in the future. So if it's not entirely 100% correct, you'll be able to go in and change it sometime in the future, but you have to still do the revenue loss calculation. The only exception is if you've not received any funds.
So Eric, on these dollar amounts, as far as being committed or obligated and actually expended, I would think that there's a lot of counties in Montana, more than likely may not even have chosen to obligate their funds, much less have expended them by now. So there shouldn't be any issues with entering zeros across the board for that, if that fits your scenario, is there?
That is correct. And where people are getting hung up is in the Treasury report's broken down into 4 different categories. Category 3 is revenue loss, and people can't get past that without doing the calculation. So you can go zeros through 1, zeros through 2, try to ignore 3, and you can't get to 4 for submission. So you're correct that if the money has been received and is just sitting in your accounts, you've not obligated or expended any of it, zeros across the board is the format. You still have to do the revenue loss calculation, which means you got to go back to 2019 base year and then do a calculation and input data from 19, 20, and 21 to be able to get to that step 4.
But on that revenue, isn't there certain revenues that you do not put in there that you probably received, but they don't factor into the calculation?
That's correct. Good transition. It's like we planned this. So I'll take you to the National Association of Counties has a revenue loss calculation program that you can use. That's what I'm trying to open up right now. And it'll give you a sample of what it is that they're going to be looking for numbers and information. And Commissioner, the zeros, I don't think work on this, on that section 3 of the Treasury form. So from a 10,000 foot level, here's the ARPA revenue calculator replacement. Fiscal year end, June 2019. The calculation date is 18 months, so it goes to 12/31 of 2020. You establish a base year, and these are all links. So if you want to figure out how to do your base year, you click down here for your base year calculation. This is where you have to go back and pull through your historical data, and this is likely going to subject me to additional complaints and concerns. This is more in line with what you report on your census data forms than any of your annual financial reports or operating budgets. It's not the same. So this is the part that takes some work to pull out. Property taxes, sales and gross tax receipts in certain categories, licensing and permits, income tax, again, licensing and permit taxes. All this can roll up, including other revenue, into what that base is supposed to be. Then you go back to your summary form. You want to calculate your growth rate, which can be assumed to be 4.1, unless you think you have a different growth rate that would more beneficially impact your ability to pay yourself a revenue loss. If not, you can just use the 4.1. And then you have to go through and actually put in from your actual revenue worksheet in a 12-month period prior to 12/31 of 2020, those same categories of revenues. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
It does, but I think that in there lies probably the biggest rub for the majority of the counties is being able to extract the appropriate data out of your accounting system and then plugging it into this spreadsheet. In some cases, I think counties can benefit from utilizing their auditors to do it, but I think the auditors are going to be hard pressed because of the short time period to offer much help as far as the amount of time, because they're already in their audit seasons also.
Commissioner, you are correct. The other confounding issue is, as you see in these revenue reports from your base years, they're calendar years. So between your auditors and your software, those are probably the places that you can look to extract data in some usable fashion to be able to fill out these forms. And I'm saying this as gently as I can. You'll have a chance to fix, we're being told you'll have a chance to fix these in the future. So you need to give it your best shot and get as good of accurate information as you can on this interim report, knowing that you might be able to amend it at some point in the future.
So Eric, from the chat, There's a question that says, if you have already submitted your interim report, can you redo it to include the revenue loss?
You've already submitted and didn't do revenue loss, congratulations. I think you'll be able to amend in the future, but if you haven't accepted interim report, leave it. That's my recommendation. I can't see my chat. Dan, is there more questions in there, or can we move on?
Nothing else in the chat, so I think we're ready to move on.
All right. And again, I just want to make sure that we're distinguishing between this interim report that's due next week and then your annual report that's going to be due at the end of October or year after year. And that is going to be the detailed obligations and expenditures. We're still, we're still waiting for final rules from U.S. Treasury on what allowable expenses are. The interim rules, we're being told, are not likely to change significantly. So that's going to be a pretty good template for what are going to be allowable expenses. But once the final rules come out, I think it'll help us, you, your auditors, and anybody that's inquiring to you about what allowable expenses are. We'll be on much better ground to be able to give guidance and advice on what you can spend your direct allocated money on. Still those same broad categories: water, wastewater, broadband, COVID-19 response costs. But then there's that great big wide open ability for you to distribute it out as you see fit to other nonprofits, businesses, or constituents. So there are still, I think, 8 counties in Montana that have not requested their direct allocation from U.S. Treasury. And if folks are interested, and once the final rules come out, I think these forums are going to be really helpful for us to all talk about what great ideas you guys have and how you can put that money to good use, and hopefully for long-term beneficial use for your constituents. To finalize it, I guess when the final rules come out, we will be sending those out to the membership wide and far as soon as we get those. And I keep saying anytime now because we keep hearing anytime now, but I'm not convinced I know what anytime now means when it comes to Treasury guidance. If I can get back to share. Oh, here we go. This is new, at least new for me. U.S. Treasury's created a website or an email account where you can directly submit questions to. So I'm going to type it in the box here. In all of so the feds have done a good job of webinars and frequently asked questions and interim rules, and in all of the things that they've sent out, there's a big caveat that says we will not answer questions about allowable expenditures. The first crack in that armor has been their presentation of this email address directly to U.S. Treasury that's supposed to give responses to questions about allowable expenses. None other video conferences, discussions whatsoever have they been on the line in public, in writing, telling you what allowable expenses are. So if you have something that you want to spend your money on and you can't see that it directly correlates to interim guidelines, specific allowable expenditures, send them the email and start sharing with everybody if you're getting confirmation back that certain expenses are allowable. This is the only source that we know of so far that will give you definitive answers on allowable expenses. And then if you get an answer back, print the email, save it, because what we're trying to avoid is that 5, 6, 7 years from now, we have IG audits or compliance audits coming back, going through what were previously allowable expenses and questioning whether those were. I always use the example of FEMA. You can get preliminary approval from a FEMA caseworker, essentially, or field worker. They'll tell you that something's an allowable expense, and 5 years later, they'll come back in an audit of some form and then try and argue with you that it's not an allowable expense. I want us to think that same theory with anything that we're doing with ARPA funds. If you get something in writing from U.S. Treasury or the feds, keep it and save it, because you're all likely subject to audits in the future. The SLFRP at treasury.gov is the email address that you can apparently send questions directly to.
Got another question, Eric. What happens if we do not get this report in by August 31st? This county's still trying to get the ID me verification status to access the funds.
I was hoping somebody would ask me that question. I don't know, and they don't know. You will be put on a list of likely follow-up folks from Treasury to kind of poke you. If you're registered in the system, you've received the money and you have not submitted the report, I'm guessing there's going to be a way where that tickles that system to remind you of reports first. And then if you just fail to do the reports, I'm sure there's some clawback provision somewhere. But I don't know that they're going to exercise those yet. Montana's not the only state that just surprisingly found out this week loss of revenue is going to be a requirement. So I do think that the Treasury Department's going to have to give some flexibility and discretion for late reports. I don't know what happens, but I don't think they're going to take away your birthday in the first month. So be patient, do what you can, and then we'll see what happens if we're not hitting that deadline. Maybe that's the first question somebody should ask on the slfrp@treasury.gov email. And then one final point. If you didn't receive any money, you've not made your request, or if you've made your request but have not received the money yet, your report's not due. You don't have an interim report to do. I'm going to go back to what we said before. If Jason and I would have known that there was a revenue loss calculation required in this first interim report, we would have recommended all of you wait until after this reporting deadline to request your funds, because not many of you have obligated or expended them. They're essentially just sitting there. But we didn't know, so that's where we're at.
So yeah, is it appropriate to interpret that revenue loss calculation that if you actually show a loss from your base year to the end of 2020 with that inflationary factor calculated in, but whatever that difference is, that now becomes free and clear money for any use that counties want to use that money for?
Yes, that is the intent of the revenue calculation, and that is the intent of the worksheet. You get to pay yourself back for an imputed 4.1% growth year over year for revenue loss. Yes. That should become, and that this is one of the things we need to work with your auditors about. That should become unencumbered, general governmental purposes, discretionary money. You should be able to put that wherever you want to put that in terms of revenue loss. I guess I'm going to open it up to you. We don't do this very often. Has anybody done the revenue loss calculation and found something significant, beneficial for the county?
Rosebud County did the loss calculation. We found something that's not beneficial. You have to have a airport runway paved, and you had a $3 million FAA grant. That counts into your revenue.
Yeah. So the way that they're capturing.
If I did it right, we had a loss.
Go ahead and say that again.
Well, Sheridan County did it, and if I did it right, which I think so, and Jason pretty much thinks so, then we did have a pretty good sized loss actually.
We should stay in touch with those calculations just to see. I think it's possible to have a loss. I think it's more likely that you're going to see anomalies like Rosebud had with revenue streams that are going to get counted as a base year that aren't going to be there in subsequent years, or vice versa. You have a base year that established another source of money that then came in the following year, which is going to skew things up. Part of it's a lack, at least in my mind, it's a lack of understanding from Treasury about how local governments operate, and particularly with Montana and your ability to float your mills and newly taxable values that can adjust based on the changes in your tax base. But keep the calculations going, and let's share that information back and forth. We'll take question and answers at the end, but we are 26 minutes into this, and I want to leave time for our honored and special guests. So I'm going to start with Anna Miller, who, fresh off a long and exciting meeting yesterday that I got to observe, can give us an update on all things 632 and state funds.
Well, ooh. Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Light echo, but much better.
Okay, just a second. It looks like I'm on two places. Can you like get rid of me in one of the places? I think
I will
that's
see what I can do, Anna.
okay.
Well, it looks like you're muted on one and you're live on the other.
Okay. But we're still getting that echo.
Feedback. It's not as bad.
Okay. I'll move
Why don't we, can we flip?
there.
And can you remove one of hers? The one doesn't have a camera. Just kick that one off.
That's the one that she's speaking through. Can you speak through your camera, Ann?
Yeah.
Anna? Oh, there we go. That sounds good.
Okay. Well, we did. Let me see if I can do something here.
There we go.
Now, can you still? I'm still doing that. Well, I'll try to be careful. We had a meeting with the Infrastructure Commission yesterday. They're meeting monthly. And yesterday they took up the information that we put together from your submissions. And we were to take in project and then we were to rank them, which we did, and then present them to the committee. We had over 330 applications. We ranked 250 of them. I want to certainly give credit to the Department of Commerce, and I know Renee Lemon is on, and Rachel Clark, and a bunch of folks at Commerce. They helped with that, as well as staff from DEQ. So we put forth the applications that ranked. There were some that were ineligible. For instance, the program cannot fund a fire flow project. So if that was a project or a project that dealt mostly with growth, that would be another ineligible project. We also had some projects that were questionable, and we're still intending to work with communities on those projects and do some follow-up to see what we can do. The state got money in 2 separate deposits. So we got one deposit on June 2020 or 21. And then we'll get our second deposit on June of 22. So we have ARPA funds for minimum allocation, which was in House Bill 632. And you just need to fill out your application for that and we can start processing that. Those will be processed on a rolling basis. The committee did approve almost $6 million in applications. I'm going to try and just take one of these and say I'm leaving. Let's see what happens. Okay. Is that better? Okay, great.
Yes.
All right. So anyhow, if you have applications for a minimum grant, go ahead and get those into us. And then we will be looking at those and presenting them each month to the commission. Those have to still go to the governor for his sign off, but we will be processing those as we move along. The competitive grants, what the commission decided to do was to authorize $125 million. So basically projects, I'm going to say 1 through 74 were ranked. They got a cap on them of $2 million. We still have to have the governor sign off on those, but we will be working with the community, starting to set up project calls to work through what we're going to do. you as counties where you have agreed to give a minimum grant allocation to, say, a water and sewer district, or maybe you have a project on your own. For those of you that did contribute to, let's say, a water and sewer district or a town, whatever, we're going to have to have an interlocal agreement between you and that water and sewer district, or you and the town, to spell out who's doing what. We will have a grant agreement with you as a county, that those funds will go to you, and then we'll work out the process to get the funds spent on the project. So we've still got a fair amount of work to do. And I'd like to say all those agreements are in shape and ready to go. They have been submitted to the governor's office. We're waiting for their legal counsel to review those and make sure we're doing okay. One other thing I'd just like to bring up as we move the process forward, there looks like that there will be a second round of funding. Again, the state is going to get a second round of a tranche of funds, just like you will get a second tranche of funds. So there will be more work to be done. And with those projects, we have to have agreements in place by December 2024. All money has to be spent by December 2026. So we've got some deadlines on this fund, but yet we have some time left. One of the other things that probably is not unfamiliar for you is that we will probably be crossing the federal threshold for the Single Audit Act. Many communities will receive more than $750,000 in federal funds. And also, if you had any grants in House Bill 6 or 7, those are going to be funded by ARPA funds. So those are going to be federal funds out of a federal catalog number, and we'll get that to you so that your auditors can see that. We hope to be in attendance. I think we've got a booth or a table at your annual meeting in September. So we'll have staff up there to help talk to people and work through things. We're going to do some follow-up. This was the first time for us through this process. So we've still got some things to learn and listen, and I don't know what we're going to change. We'll have to bring any changes we had to the commission and make sure that they agree with those. Those are 3 senators and 3 representatives. And then we've got to figure out the reporting. Whatever money goes out, we're going to have to report on to the federal government. That'll be contained in those agreements. I'm assuming if you had engineers, or if the water and sewer district had engineers working on those, we'll have to be doing that reporting. And that's something that'll be a new area that we're working on. And with that, I think I'll throw it over to Renee so she can talk to us about Department of Commerce, maybe.
Sure. Can you guys hear me? I'm Renee Lemon. I'm with the Community Development Division at the Montana Department of Commerce. And so while DNRC has taken really the lead role in supporting this effort, Commerce has a role in leading the technical assistance team. So that's 5 members of our staff here at Commerce. And then we are also contracting 10 engineering firms that can provide up to 20 hours for each community. They can provide technical assistance. So what does that look like? What can they help with? So depending at what stage that you're at in your planning for water and wastewater projects, they can help you identify problems and potential solutions. They can help put together funding strategies, and then they can actually help you with your application. And Anna mentioned that there's going to be a second round of competitive grants, and then they can also help you with your minimum allocation grant application as well. And so what does it look like for you to ask for assistance? So the first step would be to go to the state's ARPA website, which I can put in the chat. So that's arpa.mt.gov. And there's a big red contact us button that leads you to a phone number, or you can just input your request right there. So once we receive that request, our technical team will work with you to determine what assistance that you need. And then we'll connect you with either a staff member or one of those engineering firms. We also have one of our technical assistance team members on today, Rachel Clark, who is one of our engineers at the Department of Commerce. So Rachel, do you just want to come on for a moment and say hello and make sure that I didn't miss anything?
Sure. Thank you, Renee. As she said, my name is Rachel Clark. I'm an engineer with the Department of Commerce, and we're here to help you in any way that we possibly can. So if you have questions, feel free to give us a call, email us. You can go through the arpa.mt.gov site. Just click on contact us. There's phone numbers, emails, whatever you need.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. And we're happy to answer any questions.
I have a question quick. If we put in a couple weeks ago for a minimum allocation grant, what is the process? When do we hear, or what's the next step after we apply for a minimum allocation grant?
Did you put it in before or after July 15th?
It went in after July 15th.
Okay, so DNRC is gonna review those and send them to the Advisory Commission for approval on a monthly basis. So I believe Autumn had a list of a dozen or maybe a little bit more than that will go up before the Infrastructure Advisory Commission at their September 22nd meeting.
Okay, thank you.
This is Anna. One question that we may start asking you is, I know they funded, I'm going to say like 70 projects or recommended funding for 70 projects. If you had a, let's say you were number, 100 and are not in the funding or that project wasn't in the recommended funding that the committee agreed to at that time, we will also maybe be contacting you and saying, hey, if your water and sewer district that you were involved with wants to do a loan, are you still okay with committing funds to that water and sewer district if their funding package changes? So that's something folks should be thinking about.
So, Anna, I have a kind of accounting question or a compliance monitoring question. You talked about the reports that are going to be required through the state for either the reserved allocation or the competitive grant process. From the federal perspective, if counties are going to get this money through 632 in any of the ways that they can get it, they're going to be considered subrecipients, correct?
Right.
So the reason that that's important for membership, if you recall back in CARES Act, the state set up a reimbursement program. So the state of Montana took the onus on all reporting and all compliance with all CARES Act funding that they distributed to local governments. They made you submit for eligible expenses and then reimbursed you. So that tail for compliance monitoring didn't come down to the counties and CARES the same as it will through ARPA. And just make sure you know that, because subrecipient monitoring can get pretty detailed about what you do, how you report expenditures of equipment, how you keep inventories, how you depreciate. All those things are different under ARPA than they were under CARES. And the state is going to be in partnership with you on the reporting for all the money distributed under 632.
I believe I saw a question about the interlocal agreement. Again, we have that at the governor's office. We've got one developed, and I think it was very similar to what Department of Commerce used for their community development block grant funding. So it's been modified to reflect some of the ARPA changes needed. We'll have that out as soon as that gets reviewed and is available. So as soon as we have that, that'll be out for folks. And also a sample, a template of the just grant agreement for you folks to look at, so you can see the kinds of things that are in there, talking about subrecipients, talking about reporting. So that will be out there too. And on our ARPA website that Renee or Rachel referenced, I'm not sure which one, there's all kinds of other things out there too, that there's a good, FAQs, questions and answers that you can go through and look at. And we're still developing those. Every time something new comes up, we're looking at that. Hey, that's a good question. We've had, 5 or 6 of those. Let's do an FAQ on that. So if people have the same question, they can look at that. I'm sure you probably have already seen it, but the tables as to who's receiving what dollar amount. I don't think there was anything, or I don't know that it affected, Eric, maybe even I know that Browning, because it disincorporated, we had a little disbursement of funds, and then because of that there was an adjustment, and then Ismay, the town of Ismay, didn't take any funds. I'm not sure if that affected the counties at all.
It didn't, although we think Browning should have, and I'll leave it at that.
Okay, one of the things about the program, it is a reimbursement program, but the federal legislation lets costs go back to March of 2021. So whenever that agreement is put in place, if there were engineering costs on a project, or other costs on the project that go back to 2021, March of 2021, we will be able to reimburse those.
And that March of 2021 is the same date that's applicable for your direct federal ARPA funds. If you had costs incurred, COVID-19 response costs or project costs, you can go back with your direct allocation to March as well. While you're thinking of questions to fire at these guys, Cole Mack and Jay Reardon are also here from Department of Labor and Industry. No pre-prepared presentation from them, but if you have questions about workforce development initiatives or how you can use some of your funds in those types of areas, they are willing and able to answer any questions related to workforce development and ARPA funds.
One other thing I wanted to mention is, we're still finding out about funding that's available. And in fact, I got a call from the folks that work at Department of Agriculture Rural Development, and there was money for clinics around the state. I think they got like $30 million, but they have to have this program developed and up there. It's ARPA funds. And clinics can access those funds, and the applications have to be in by October 31st. So even as we're going along, we're finding out about programs and things that communities can certainly take advantage of. The United States Department of Economic Development has also got some funds for tourist areas impacted by COVID. And one other thing, here at the state, there were some funds that came through the state in House Bill 632, where if you had service workers, people that were at restaurants that lost their jobs and weren't able to pay their utilities, power bills, I think even cell phone bills, water and sewer bills, there's going to be access to those types of things. So go to the state's website and look at those things that are available. The counties may not be able to access them, but some folks in your communities or businesses may want to look at that and see if there's any help that they could get going through this COVID situation.
So Eric, I think it was mentioned a little bit ago about most counties are probably going to wind up being in this additional audit category due to the amount of monies that we're receiving. Is it correct to understand that an allowable use of these ARPA funds is also for administration as well as those added audit expenses?
Correct. Yeah, there are, my colleagues across the country, there are examples of states that are even spinning up some technical advisory entities to do pre-qualifications and answer the question and answer about allowable expenses. We could do that. You guys could do that individually. Additional auditing expenses, if you want to have your auditors run your calculation for revenue loss and they're charging you for it, that's a reimbursable expense. Single audit acts are expensive. When those get triggered by your receipt of those funds, you can hold aside some of the money that you received either in your direct allocation or build it into your project budgets to be able to account for those additional costs. They are clearly and explicitly allowable expenses. Any other generic questions for anybody?
Hey, Eric.
Go ahead.
Eric, I was going to ask you, one of the things Tim Burton brought up from his, national perspective and phone calls was he said that there weren't very many states very active with this ARPA money. Are you guys finding out nationally with your check-ins? Is that the case also, that there are a lot of states that haven't done a whole lot as far as the ARPA work and getting the money out?
Yeah, we're keeping track of the number of counties. I think of the 3,200 counties, there's less than 10% that haven't received or requested their direct allocations. Cities are slightly different in that all the cities and towns under 250,000 receive their money through the states, but all the counties got their money directly from Treasury. About 90% of the counties have received their funds, but not very many have obligated, primarily because we're waiting for final issued Treasury guidance. Nobody wants to spend money that they're going to have to pay back. Along the ARPA lines, the last thing I wanted to update you folks on is I had the chance to go talk to the Montana Telecommunications Association folks earlier this week, and they're chomping at the bit to come knock on their commissioner's doors to get money for broadband expansion and broadband development and broadband projects. I told them the same thing, that we're, everybody's still on pause for a little bit, at least until we get better guidance from Treasury about what allowable expenses are. But remember, broadband is its own standalone category that has little to do with COVID-19, and that your money directly from the feds, the direct allocations from ARPA, and the money that's set aside in 632 for broadband, and whatever additional funding might come in the future for broadband, is all going to be one large category that you're going to get a heck of an opportunity to see how you can partnership with the private sector in broadband deployment and development. There's no rush on that. And I did tell the telco folks to just kind of be patient until we get final and better rules and guidelines from US Treasury. But that is the next thing that I think is going to be coming all of your way from all of the, whether it's the charter and Bresnan corporations or your regional telcos and co-ops, they're going to be coming and asking for your help and your funds for deployment. And then I'll finish with this. I got the chance to watch the infrastructure committee meeting yesterday, and I think Anna confirmed, if I'm correct, they were pleasantly surprised at the amount of collaboration that was happening between cities and counties on projects. That was not unnoticed to the committee, and they were patting you guys on the back for thinking of ways where county funds could be partnered with city funds for important critical infrastructure. So congrats. You're on mute, Anna.
Yeah, the committee was very, very complimentary and thankful of the folks working together. And we appreciate that. We know that it's been a long slog and a quick turnaround. I mean, I think when the legislature was in session, they thought, oh, these dates are fine and that's a long time away and people can get ready, but it really was a tight timeline. And we hope with the second round, we can give you more time and we'll have more time to process things. So, but thank you all for your hard work.
So Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eric, and yeah, and thank you, Anna and crew. I think you did a great job. There hasn't been much. If you've had a chance to look at the chat, Eric was able to put in several links there that of what he showed earlier in the presentation. So I would suggest you look at those. But yeah, if there is there anything else for the good of the order before we close this town hall meeting? Any just general questions or anything while we still have folks here from the state to respond to questions?
Dan, I got one.
Go ahead.
Is there a list of these projects approved by the meeting yesterday online, or do we have to watch the video?
No, we will get the list posted online. In fact, we're working on that today. And we can also send it to Eric so that he has it, so you guys can see it.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, because we already got one of the, I guess, potential grantees at our doorstep yesterday and this morning, so.
Okay.
I don't know if this is a general question, but you know, are culverts now an allowable cost expense? Part of the stormwater?
Anna, say yes. Yeah.
I was wondering if Rachel was still on. If you're going to have culverts, you need to have a tie to water quality. Rachel, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. So the criteria for funding these projects, the eligibility criteria is that it meets the drinking water or clean water state revolving fund criteria. So culverts are allowed if they're associated with a wastewater treatment plant, something like that. If they're not associated with that, then you need to demonstrate that you are going to improve water quality. So you have to document that you have some water quality issue going on right now and that a culvert would fix that. So it might not be an easy project to score very high.
But in terms of the request is to do culvert work to improve water quality on the reserved allocation, the county set aside money. Scoring doesn't necessarily matter. You could score it low, but it's still going to be, if they do it right, an eligible expense, correct?
Yes, if you're using your minimum allocation, it doesn't even get scored. You can use your minimum allocation on whatever you want. So you would only have to demonstrate it has a water quality benefit, and then you can use your minimum allocation on that entirely.
Is the minimum allocation, is that pot B?
I don't remember what pots you had, Anna. That's not the competitive grants. It's the legislature set aside 150 million for cities, counties, towns to use. It allocated them with the gas tax formula, and you can use that money for whatever you want as long as it's eligible.
Eric, I think it'd be good to mention on the minimum allocation money is it does require a match though.
Yes, it does.
And your federal direct allocation can be used as a match and is the benchmark for a match, essentially.
Yes.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, looks like we're about out of questions. We do want to appreciate and thank our presenters. Great information. Hopefully it'll help you navigate at least for another couple weeks the murky waters that can be at times this process. So I would refer you back to those websites as well that Eric showed. I think those would be helpful as well. And it seems like everyone from the state's very willing to help and support you if you've got questions. So thanks again. If there isn't anything else for the group or for the good of the order, we'll go ahead and adjourn. And I think Eric and I will try to connect and figure out the next time we'll host one of these, but it'll probably be probably after annual conference. So just another opportunity to plug MACo's annual conference. Make sure you get on their website and register for that.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks for having us. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So long.